Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future Construct podcast. I am your host, Amy Peck, and we have a fantastic guest today. We have Jason Goecke, who is the VP and General Manager at Intel for Commercial Client Software and Services. Wow, that is a serious title, Jason.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm here in Half Moon Bay. I've been in Intel just over 3 years and started to lead a collaboration group here. And we've been focused now on really expanding what we're doing in the commercial client, which is our vPro product, and creating cloud services around that, which is really a new area where Intel's focused right now, is developing the software and services side of things. Before that, I've been at Cisco, where I led part of the WebEx group. So I'm very familiar with UC and Zoom and know many of the people in the industry as well. Before that, I had sold a startup, which was in the telecom cloud API segment, and sold that to Cisco to actually create their developer platform for WebEx before taking over bigger parts of what we were doing there. But my history has always been smaller companies, startups, earlier stage. Started coding when I was 15, so I've been in tech for over 30 years, amazingly enough, which makes me older than I like to think I am. But that's been a good journey. I've got 3 kids, and as I mentioned, live here in Half Moon Bay, and really into photography as well.
Oh, that's great. So what drew you to technology? Why did you start coding so young? It wasn't as cool back then as it is now.
Yeah. So at the time, I'd been working since I was 9. I had a paper route in Iowa, where I'm originally from. So I'm more of a Midwesterner than being out here in California. And I always had some kind of a job, working in a movie theater, things like that. And frankly, the reason I got into it is my mother told me to take a typing class. I did, got data entry, and then kind of worked my way into IT, surreptitiously, kind of around the edge there. And I don't want to say I was focused on getting into tech. It just kind of happened, and it turned out to be a great thing. It was a great opportunity, lots of luck in terms of timing and seizing that moment, and then just stuck with it because it was clear it was becoming a good career.
And so from there, instead of kind of going in and starting with some of the bigger companies, obviously you're with a huge company now. So why the startup route then? What drew you to that world?
Again, a bit of luck. I was working for a call center outsourcing company in Denver by the name of Teletech at the time. And there was a company called Genesis that had started a new call center software company. Got to know them. We were their first customer, and they effectively said, "Hey, move out to California," because I was in Denver at the time, "get a passport and you're going to travel." I said, "Okay, let's go." And then they turned out to be wildly successful. I'd like to pretend I saw that coming, and that's why I joined it, but really it was the travel side of things. And ended up going around the world with them. Really got out of just doing technology and then into the business side as well, because I got into sales, and then country manager for Spain with them, things like that. And then that really rounded me out to have a career more broadly in tech beyond even just coding.
So you speak Spanish with a Castilian accent.
When I do speak, it is with a Madrileño accent, but I'd like to pretend I speak better than I do, but I'm not that great. And it's been a while since I've been living there. I think I moved back to Bay Area 12 years ago.
Nice. Well, you picked some pretty great places to live. I have to say, Spain and Half Moon Bay, not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
So in your day-to-day now, with the vPro product, and it would be great to just get a little bit more understanding of the breadth of that product. But what are some of the other technologies that you're seeing? Because really it's this confluence of technologies now, and what are you looking at that's exciting to you?
Yeah. So a few things in terms of the vPro product. This is the hardware platform that Intel has that really supports commercial or business segments. And it's effectively their top tier product for security, for performance, everything you need. It has the ability to do out-of-band management underneath the OS called AMT, and has been a leading product in the market for I think 15 plus years. And what we're looking to do is modernize it by allowing for cloud services to attach to what is out there, both existing install base and new, to allow for cloud native type provisioning. Because traditionally you had to do install local software, set it up within your IT department. So we're looking to modernize that over time right now. And that's where we're focused in. Of course, for Intel, that is a whole new muscle we're building, is the ability to do software and services as a business. Of course, we do a ton of software. We've got 17,000 developers, but it's all firmware and drivers and things like this rather than building services on top of that. And that's a big initiative we have right now. In terms of tech more broadly, where I find a lot of interest in what's happening out there, because we're now building new cloud services at Intel ourselves, is, when I started in the startup world, it really took, a team of hundreds of engineers to go out and do something. And whether you're even embracing open source or other pieces of software, you had to build a lot of the infrastructure and capabilities yourself. Given where we're at in the rapidity at which cloud service and cloud platforms like an Azure and an AWS or Google Cloud are expanding their capabilities, you can take a much smaller group of people and just do amazing things and get to market more quickly. So I think that evolution is continuing. It's actually accelerating. It's not slowing down or flattening out. And it means it's a lot less riskier to try new things. So I think it underpins a lot of the innovation that we're seeing out there, because you can invest money, you can take more bets, it takes fewer resources, you can get to market quicker, test what you're doing. And it just has such a broad impact on technology that it's really amazing to see that happen. And I've been at the start of all of that, because I started in the cloud back when EC2, which is the Amazon hosting service, was in beta. Right. So I feel like I've been at the start of watching the cloud transformation.
And that is very, very true that we hear about companies now moving to the cloud, but then there are companies still that are very reticent, and it's like they live for on-prem. They're nervous about security. You mentioned security when we're talking about vPro. Why is it important for companies to embrace cloud, and those who are kind of taking a back seat and in a wait and see moment?
Yeah. So I think part of what the cloud does there for you is it gives you the opportunity, especially as developing new services and things like that. And what we're doing is really led around giving APIs to third-party ISVs or developers and the like, is you can build in very good security once in what you're doing in the cloud, keep it constantly updating and evergreen, and then deliver that multiple times rather than having to do that in your own your own data center or things like this. And on the Intel side as well, what we're doing a lot on the security side is really doing it at the hardware level, the firmware level, the BIOS level, all the way up under and integrating very well with the different operating systems to really create a holistic ability from cloud services down to the hardware platforms to provide that security profile to do that. And that's absolutely critical. It's getting more and more acute for us to do, because it's not just hackers in basements, it's nation states that are participating in finding security issues and things like this and then exploiting them. So it's becoming ever more important, arms race to make sure you're securing everything across the spectrum of your services and hardware.
And so on the eve of sort of looking at the landscape now with blockchain and these decentralized constructs, is that just adding more confusion to companies? Because some of them have just started to embrace cloud, and so then thinking about these decentralized constructs, the security around that, is that just decades away, do you think, for companies, or do you think there are companies that will kind of jump on and start building some of their data constructs within blockchain and smart contracts and so forth?
Yeah, so blockchain, I'm both involved with professionally and very interested in it personally. I feel that we've seen major epochs within the internet. The first one being web commerce, kind of came up, crashed in 2000, but then came back, and then you had Amazon. Billion-dollar industries coming out of that particular phase. Then you had social and social networks, right? And coming out of that, you had Friendster and MySpace that kind of rised and then fell, kind of went away. But then Facebook came out, and you have another multi-billion-dollar industry with Twitter and things like this. And I really think decentralized web and Web3, including blockchain and DeFi and the like, is the next phase. And what we're seeing is the idea that blockchain is primarily a cryptocurrency is the first crash. And I've said that for a while, and finally it came home to roost in a meaningful way. But the underlying technology and what it can enable, we're just beginning to see the beginning of it. And I think it will be another we'll see billion-dollar companies come out of this that we don't even fathom, just like we did, Amazon and Facebook before. And professionally, some of the things I'm doing is at Intel, we have this idea of the transparent supply chain, where we track things through the manufacturing process, so its origination and whether it's even been modified somewhere along the path as it gets into the OEMs and things like that. So we've been doing that for a while with certificates and the like, but we're now creating our own blockchain where we can track that on the blockchain and make that public and traceable. And then as it goes through the further manufacturing processes, they may do the same. And this goes back to security and making sure I'm getting the unit I know I'm getting and it hasn't been tampered with along the path. So there's all sorts of applications that go well beyond cryptocurrency. And I think everyone should really be thinking through how it works and getting away from, proof of work to proof of stake. So it becomes more eco-groovy is a big part of that as well. And continuing down that path, and it will unleash a lot of different things that we just don't anticipate today.
Well, you said something around transparency. I really want to take a deep dive into that because it's something I also care a lot about. But we're going to take a little break here from our sponsors, and we will be right back. And we are back with Jason Goecke from Intel. So I do want to come back to something you said about transparency. And I am a big believer that it's kind of time to rip the Band-Aid off and for companies to have that level of transparency, not only in optimizing their own operations, but to also show how environmentally conscious they are. I think from that level, as well as the consumer level, because I think consumers are going to start to really look at this and care. So I'd love your opinion on, how do we get there? How do we move to this kind of new paradigm?
Yeah. So, going back to what I mentioned on the transparent supply chain, it's really creating that transparency to the point where you consume it the first time as an organization. But you can also then use that to say, how does it get into the secondary market? How do I make sure this has the maximum useful life down to the point of when it gets recycled? Where and how is it recycled? And then being able to provide accountability and governance around that through that process. And if you're doing that all publicly on the blockchain, you can even see a point where you have the ability to transparently put in your annual report what you've done with any of the equipment you've had and used within the organization. So it's really from birth to death of what you're doing and all the sustainability elements within that. And even to the point, Apple's always had a big approach towards taking equipment back, giving you trade-ins, and they will recycle as much as they can, right down to recycling the actual elements that are within the hardware. And how do you create that transparency that creates that accountability and that radical capability of making sure, hey, people are doing the right things in sustainability and really maximizing everything that we're doing rather than all the e-waste that we generate right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a really an important component is that origin story. And when we look at, another sort of hype cycle element around blockchain and crypto of NFT, that to me is where you start to hook into the value of NFTs as well. It's sort of like a gift that keeps on giving, as opposed to just using it as a mechanism for generating revenue with false scarcity, and it's just a marketing ploy. So you talked a little bit about blockchain and DeFi and crypto. So where do you see that moment where, I don't know that crypto's ever going to stabilize. I don't know that we need to. We already have relatively stable fiat currency. But what are some of the things that you're seeing in that realm that you think will make it a little more palatable to consumers, especially around crypto?
Yeah, so I'd say, you mentioned NFTs before. I think NFTs really started as a gamut to allow whales to create liquidity with getting people to come in and participate in cryptocurrency through collectibles, right? Again, another kind of hype cycle, but there is utility there. And I think what's missing within NFTs is really identity. An NFT doesn't know it's an NFT, which creates a set of issues in how valuable it really is. And if you start tying identity to that, you start to unleash all sorts of interesting use cases and value. There's an initiative within the blockchain world called self-sovereign identity, which is effectively thinking that, California DMV could create a blockchain that includes your details, your age, your address, your driving status, all of these things. And when you walk into a bar, they don't need to know all those details. They just need to know you're over 21. So let me present, zero trust QR code. They scan that, they know you're 21, you move on. So it allows you to truly manage and govern your identity in ways never thought possible before. And starting to bake these into the underlying cryptocurrency capabilities, whether it be smart contracts, NFTs, within the blockchain. I think there's a lot of work happening there. I know several people in the industry focused on that, specifically within Cardano, which is a proof of stake network, that are really focused in that area. And I think there's going to be a lot of value unlocked, because you can think about contingent workers that are out there in the marketplace. All the big companies, Intel included, have vast amounts of people coming in and working, and they will move between different companies. So imagine if you could keep your employable profile as a self-sovereign identity element within the blockchain and carry that with you autonomously as you move between these different capabilities and gig economy and things like this. So I think there's a big area of development that's happening there, which will be good.
No, I think you're right. I think that it's going to unlock a lot more opportunity, not just for those who are sort of already in the network, but refugees, people around the world who have been completely off grid. It's sort of an opportunity for them to prove who they are. Also giving data kind of a time to live as well. You go to see a doctor, you just give them whatever data they need for that hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours, and then lock it up. However, the caveat to that is, I'm a big believer in this, but the caveat is that it's work for us as consumers. Like, we have to not only demand our data back and have some kind of a simple interface that will allow us to manage our data, but will we do the work is the question. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, you're getting at the usability side of things. I mean, I know how to do it, but I've got to go figure out, this wallet or that wallet. There's 10 different types of wallet. There's literally 1,000 different cryptocurrencies.
Plus your 12 words with, like 10 wallets with 12 words each.
Exactly.
Yeah, forget it. I mean,
your mnemonics, everything else, right? So it is very complicated right now. And I think that is another area where we've got to get better. And I think it's going to take a broad coalition in the industry to do that, because it's all the way down from the hardware. If you want to participate in some aspects of mining and in that value, you want a very easy way to approach that and do that, versus right now having to do your own mining farms and really be deeply technical to get there. Same thing on approaching it from a DeFi perspective. How do you make this accessible to the masses, so it's as easy as walking up and using your typical payment system that you have right now with when you walk into the store? If we can get there, it's going to unlock massive potential and really bring financial systems in places it's struggled to be at before. I know Cardano is doing a lot of work, for example, the group behind it, into Africa and other markets around education and DeFi and the like. And you can only do that, again, if you make the transactions quick, cheap, and get away from proof of work like Ethereum or Bitcoin are, and into proof of stake, which really also helps drive down the environmental impact as well.
Yeah. And I think, we're moving forward on all fronts. I do think that the complexity is the thing that's the real blocker. But I do have hope that, this is an opportunity for us as consumers to actually have much more agency in what the future looks like.
Yes.
So let's switch a little bit towards, just, you're living this great life out in Half Moon Bay. You're working in technology. What are the things that just excite you about emerging technology? Besides blockchain, in maybe the AI realm. Of course, I'm always focused more on, immersive technologies. But what are some of the things that you're seeing that just, are exciting trends?
Well, one of the big trends I'm seeing is, when you look at large corporations like Intel, or when I worked at Cisco and things like that, there's a big need to continue to drive a focus on diversity and inclusion and the like. And I've been working with a group, one of my big parts of my team is down in Guadalajara, Mexico. And one of the complaints they've had is, hey, if I want to move beyond a certain level in the organization, I've got to move to Santa Clara, the headquarters. I got to move to the US. And I think with the advent and the acceptance of broader remote working, And I experienced that, of course, when I was at WebEx, but it's really become, ubiquitous now. And things like Starlink, bringing internet anywhere, is you can start to look at models where you start to develop diversity and inclusion in place rather than migration to make that happen in various ways. Because there's all sorts of potential in remote places that could allow you to take advantage of new insights, new perspectives, and instead of making them move, just give them the technology and let them work from there with all those technologies. So I think that's something where you start to seeing is this D&I in place rather than forcing migration into different places to make that happen.
Yeah, and I mean, the irony, of course, with these D&I initiatives, if you move someone from their hometown or home country, they're losing that connection to their culture, which gives them the perspective that you're after.
100%. That's exactly it.
But we're getting there. I do see a lot of these initiatives moving forward in companies, and I think kind of going back to the blockchain conversation, it moves from being a marketing exercise to becoming really endemic within companies and to really be part of the culture.
Right.
And so, going back to also to that remote work, it sounds like you were, as I was as well, kind of, pre-kerfuffle, which is what we refer to the last couple of years. But now that it's really the norm, do you see that opportunity really for, optimizing the way that teams work together? Because people say that some of the things that they miss are those water cooler moments and those just happenstance interactions. How do we recreate those so that really remote work can have that same kind of, organic interaction?
Yeah. So I actually had my first remote job in 1991. Right. So I've been
Wow.
doing this, forever. When I took, I think it was a 9600 baud modem to my dorm room and continued coding remotely. Right.
Wow.
My startup was highly distributed back in, I think I started it in 2008, the one that I sold to Cisco. And we had people it was, by the time we sold it, it was about 50 people. We had people in China, in Spain, in Florida, really across the globe, because we had the opportunity to hire people in place. And the way we created that organic interaction that you'd get in the office is by using asynchronous communications. So at that time, what we had available was Skype, the consumer Skype, right? And everything was done in Skype. So you could literally, rove around the world. You had interactions. You'd have the water cooler room. You'd have, the work room, things like this. And now you've got Slack that's come out, Teams, all of the other asynchronous communication platforms. And I think that's a key to unlocking the ability to truly do remote work, and not just remote work, everyone's sitting in California, but really across the globe. You get into chat ops and these capabilities to do that. And you get to a point where these asynchronous chat platforms become kind of your central operating system to almost your team, almost the team OS, because now your Jira tickets come into it, your chat ops, all these things. And it becomes more effective because even if you're sitting in the office, that's still a better way to do it, right? Rather than getting up and walking over. Sometimes you can resolve things quicker by getting up and walking over. But one of the things, going back to your transparency discussion, a way to drive transparency within a team is to put everything in an asynchronous communication platform, right? Because now everyone has access at their fingertips across, whereas like email, it's locked. Right? You have to be on that distribution. Somebody had to include you versus I can go look at this channel and get up to speed very quickly. So even in working locally or remotely, it's still an optimal way to drive transparency, collaboration, and organic interactions within your team.
Yeah, and we took it a step further at the very beginning of the kerfuffle. We had I was working with HTC, and they had actually built a remote platform called Sync, and so we would actually have team meetings. And it was VR is still really clunky, right? And it's not an optimal user experience. But you can start to think, when the next generation of these wearables come out, that actually having people appear, even if it's as a hologram, will start to give us back a little more of that, even beyond the kind of asynchronous nature. And I think we will get there as well, even with holograms. You'll just record yourself as a hologram, and then it'll pop up when somebody logs in. But I would like to take a little step into the future, and I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everyone. So propel yourself 20, 25 years into the future. And you can have any service, any gadget, gizmo, just something that makes you personally happy or just makes your life better in some way. What would it be and what would it do?
Yeah. So it just so happens I was listening to a podcast, Absolutely Mental, that's with Sam Harris and Ricky Gervais. Great, great podcast, by the way. You should listen to it. Where they talked about what if an alien showed up and had all the answers? Who would you send to talk to them, and what would you ask them for? And came up with something that I thought was great, and hadn't really thought about it that way. As, oh, let's cure disease, but it's not about curing particular diseases. It's better to ask, how do you cure aging? And that covers a lot of things, right? So if you had a device that said, hey, I can stop aging, and it's not because you want to live forever or be immortal. It's more, I want to be 20 my whole life, however long I choose to live it. Right? I think that would be a quality of life thing and an amazing technology if we could achieve that.
Yeah, I think there would be people lining up for that. I don't know that I would want to be in my 20s though. I think maybe like 33 or 34 would be kind of good, because you're just old enough to have gotten out of it.
That's
that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I want to be able to stay up until 4 a.m. Then I go back to 22.
Exactly.
Well, Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the time.